Very good. There we go. Thank you, everyone. My name is Stella Ursua. I'm the Senior Programs and Partnerships Manager here at the LA office for Grid Alternatives. We're very happy. First off, Happy New Year to everybody. Hope that you had a wonderful holiday, a safe and a healthy holiday. I know there were a lot of folks that were impacted by COVID and by the flu and whatnot. So I hope that you and your families are all doing well and have recovered. But you know, we're on to 2023. We're already at January 12th. I can't even believe it. It's just flying by already. So I'm sure that you are super busy as we are. And so we want to make this meeting as impactful as possible, make sure that you all have the updates that you need around the eTruck Retta project. So our meeting agenda today, you see on the screen, just a quick welcome and overview. We're going to share subcommittee updates for the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. We'll have some overall project updates. And then Dr. Rawls from Cal State University of Dominguez Hills will come on board and share a labor market analysis presentation. So we're very appreciative of that, Dr. Rawls. We'll have time for discussion and feedback. And then Giovanni will, I believe it's Giovanni, will share next steps for the project. So if we can go to the next slide there. And you all know this is being taped so that you can review it later on or share it with others. So we have just real quick introductions here. And if everyone could just introduce themselves, you know, fairly quickly. And we'll start with Adewale, Giovanni, and then go to the CalSTART and EPRI teams. Okay, Adewale?
Yes, good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. Adewale Ogunbadajo, pronouns here, him, Vice President for Workforce Development, Grid Alternatives.
Thank you, Adewale.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us and Happy New Year. Feliz año to everyone. Giovanni Hernandez here, Senior Community Engagement Coordinator with Grid Alternatives of Greater Los Angeles.
Thank you, Giovanni. And how about the CalSTART team?
Of course. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tuan Chi. I'm a project manager here at CalSTART. Thank you for participating in today's meeting. Really excited to discuss this with you all. Passing it on to Michael.
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Tuan. Thanks, Stella. I'm Michael Joseph. I'm a lead project manager at CalSTART for ZEB Corridor Planning and Partnerships, and I'm new to the project and working with Nate, Tuan, and closely with Grid and EPRI here.
And I think Alicia is on the line. Alicia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Tuan. Good morning and lovely to see such a wonderful group come together. My name is Alicia Gildy. I'm Vice President of Clean Fuels and Infrastructure, and I am the lucky one to work with this incredible team. Nice to see all of you.
Thank you to the CalSTART team. And how about from EPRI?
Hello everyone, my name is Kristen Bush. I am an engineer scientist with EPRI's electric transportation team, and I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Very good. Thank you, Kristen. Anyone else from EPRI today? If not, then we're going to move on to a quick project overview, and Tuan will provide us with that overview.
Great. Thank you so much, Stella. So as you know, this is the eTruck project, and the purpose is to create a California research hub to facilitate and accelerate the electrification of the medium and heavy duty drayage vehicle market in key areas. There are several project goals and objectives. The first is to advance research, development, and demonstration activities that extend the delivery range of large weight class battery electric trucks, beginning with drayage operations. We also want to engage broad stakeholders with a community-first approach and to use input to promote equity and workforce development opportunities in priority communities, especially in pollution burden and impacted communities, while also engaging with truck fleets, charging equipment and service providers, electric utilities, and planning agencies. And lastly, we want to plan, design, and deploy innovative, scalable public corridor charging strategies for MDHD electric trucks, beginning with drayage trucks. And I'm going to pass it on to Adewale.
Thank you, Tom. To get a little bit deeper into the goals, objectives, and functions, the Workforce Development Advisory Committee will ensure that pollution-impacted, underserved, and tribal communities are involved in creating and guiding this initiative, and that these priority communities are involved and benefit from the larger clean energy transition, MDHD electrification, jobs created, and other resultant economic opportunities. The objectives are to inform the project or the workforce development needs and desired impact for priority communities, communicate project activities for relevant key partners and stakeholders, the promotion of equity and workforce development opportunities in these priority communities, and to foster workforce development partnerships in the targeted priority communities for zero emission freight corridor technology and development planning and job creation. And as a function, we want to make sure that we're providing input on the workforce development plan, we're supporting equity and workforce development goals, and we're informing the workforce development plan and its accompanying activities. And to let you know that your input really does matter. We've been listening to the input from the subcommittee and incorporating it into our workforce development plan. And some of that has included the understanding that the project will be needing its own communication plan in order to have momentum going forward. Also collaborating with CalSTART programs, the HVIP, CORE, and Energize programs to host an annual commercial ZEV and infrastructure workforce development expo to discuss current training materials and opportunities in this sector. And then ultimately a labor market report will be key in identifying job skill sets for this developing sector, which we'll have some of that coming up shortly. So with that, I will pass it back to Twan.
Thank you, Adewale. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to provide just some general updates on the eTruck project itself. So first off, we've officially kicked off all of the advisory committees and we'll be actively meeting with them on a quarterly basis. We're very excited about the diversity of stakeholders that we've engaged in this in all of our committees, and we look forward to working with you all on this project. First, we have the Technology Advisory Committee. This committee will provide overall guidance to the project to progress the project. Next, we have the Industry Technology Advisory Committee. These are our industry experts, such as charging service providers, OEMs, and truck manufacturers, who will lend us their technical expertise on the industry. Then we have the Community Technology Advisory Committee, composes of community groups who will help us ensure a community-first approach and promote equity in this project. Next, some update in regards to the community engagement and workforce development. We've beginning to develop the outreach collaterals that we'll be using during our engagement activities, such as developing our fact sheet in Spanish to ensure a culturally inclusive approach to our engagement. And we've also developed one-pagers for our CTAC committee and our WDAC committee to just provide a general overview of the purpose and the goals and objectives of these committees. And next, we have the Community Engagement Strategy and Equity Plan, along with the Workforce Development Plan. Both final versions of these plans have been submitted to the CEC in December 16, 2022, and we're expecting to implement all of the engagement activities described in these plans starting this year. So as part of the project, we're working with Southern California Edison to develop an open access research and development testing lab to conduct our high-powered charging research and testing to provide manufacturers with access to testing resources. The plans to this lab has been submitted to the city of Pomona, and we're awaiting approval for it. Next, excitingly, we have our eTruck website. You can reach the website at etruck.org. It's live, it's continuously updated, and we're constantly providing resources and just updates on the project on the website. So feel free to check it out. We're very happy with how that turned out. And lastly, we will be interviewing truck manufacturers and key suppliers to understand the current technology need and landscape. And to do that, we've developed a questionnaire to identify and define parameters and vehicle characteristics that will effectively meet the operational requirements of drayage needs and other relevant truck segments. We've solicited feedback from our ITAC members for this questionnaires, and we'll start conducting these interviews in the next month or so. And if you have any questions about the current project progress, feel free to drop your questions in the chat and we'll answer them during the Q&A portion. And with that, I'll pass it back to Giovanni.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tuan, for those overall project updates. I'm just going to speak very briefly on one of the 4 advisory committees that we launched, and that GRID is in charge of facilitating alongside the work of this group, right, the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. So in August of last year, August 10th specifically, we launched and convened for the first time the Community First Technology Advisory Committee. And since then, we've had 3 meetings now, right? So we had the first quarterly meeting of last year that took place on August 10th. Then we convened a subcommittee in September to gather feedback, stakeholder feedback, community feedback for the community engagement strategy and equity plan. As Tuan alluded, it was that particular plan alongside the feedback that we obtained from the subcommittee. We submitted that final plan in December, mid-December. And so we had received feedback or questions about who's involved in some of these other committees. We want to know, right? So when we convened the CTAC for their second quarterly meeting in November, right? It was the last meeting of 2022 for them. We showed them, similarly like we're doing right now with you all, who is part of the WDAC, right? Who is part of the Workforce Development Advisory Committee. And so similarly, we want to show you all who's part of the CTAC. And so here are some of folks that comprise from academia to community-based organizations, environmental justice organizations, local government offices that have been regularly attending and participating in our CTAC committee. And then this is growing as well, because we keep getting recommendations for folks that should be at the table, or folks that just couldn't join us last year, but now they want to start being a part of this effort beginning this year. So this is kind of like who the usual suspects were per se last year, but it's an ever-growing list, of course. And similarly with this body as well, this group also continues to grow as well. So, and lastly, we wanted to also show you the scheduled quarterly meetings for this year for the CTAC. Those are the dates and times there. They are set. And if anyone wants to join, we've gotten asked in the past, can we join both? And the answer is yes. So if you want to be part of the workforce, Workforce Development Advisory Committee and the CTAC, you can, and we can certainly add you to those calendar invites. Just shoot me a message and let me know. So with that, I'll kick it back over to Tuan.
Great, thank you, Giovanni. So on December 7th last year, we got the opportunity to participate in the Zero Emission Ride and Drive event hosted by the Harbor Trucking Association at the Port of Long Beach. At this event, experts were on site to provide insights on financing, insurance, hydrogen fuel, electric charging, and mobile maintenance and repair services. And we were able to table at the event and spread the words of the e-truck project. And you can see a few pictures of the event here on this slide, and we even got to see some of the committee members, such as the wonderful Danny Gamboa pictured here. Danny, would you like to say a few words on your impression of the event?
Sure, thank you so much. Can y'all hear me? Yeah, okay, good. So this was a very interesting event. I think that the key takeaways for me was I was lucky enough to get behind the wheel of some of the trucks that were showcased at this event. There was a wide representation of OEMs. There was a whole bunch of different manufacturers on site. I was really, I guess, surprised to see how many there were. I was expecting maybe like 2 or 3 trucks, but there was like a lot of trucks. A lot of people were able to ride in them, and if you had a commercial license like I do, you were able to drive some of them. And yeah, I got behind the wheel of a couple of them, and I was really impressed with the power, the smoothness, how quiet these big trucks are. So yeah, I think we should definitely host more of these events in the future.
Thank you so much, Danny. And I'm passing it back to Giovanni.
All right. Thank you so much, Tuan. And again, thank you, Danny, for sharing with us your impressions of the event. And we agree. We certainly think that it's beneficial to organize more of these to continue to also educate the community, not just those in the industry, but just the community at large. And these kinds of events where folks can interact firsthand in person with the technology, with the trucks, and see them for themselves, even if they don't drive them, is definitely very beneficial. So it's something that we are discussing internally and trying to find out when we can schedule some of those in the near future as we move forward with this project. I am very pleased to introduce and kick this off to our guest presenters for today. We have members of the Workforce Integration Network from Cal State University Dominguez Hills with us, Dr. Crystal Rawls and Kavina de Ocampo, both who worked really hard to gather some preliminary information to put together this presentation, right? That is not intended to be an economic projection of the industry, but really to provide just some insight, some information that they were able to gather, right, in this moment in time, right? And we know that this is an ever-evolving industry, and you know, things will continue to change, but this is to help us. This presentation is to intended to help this body and us generate ideas for getting the kinds of information we'll need to inform the project moving forward, right? So again, not intended to make a projection, but to provide us with some preliminary information and kind of get us started and guide us in the right direction, right? And so again, we're really grateful for just the time and effort being put into putting this presentation together by Dr. Rawls and Kavina de Ocampo, and we'll allow them to just take it away.
Hello,
Thank you.
and thank you. Thank you for giving us this time to share. Oh, where's my presentation? There it is. Giving us this time to just share what we do have, and thank you for also helping us to set expectations. So like Giovanni said, this is compliments of our team over here at Cal State University Dominguez Hills, and Kavina de Ocampo is our labor senior business analyst, and she is going to try and pop in and out, but unfortunately will not be able to join us through this presentation. But I still wanted to honor the labor that went in. When I got a little busy, she jumped in and she helped. And so I renamed this because I know you guys have, some of you have received an overview, but it really is assessing what those workforce development needs are in these innovative technologies like these EV battery fields with the job posting analytics. So what information do we have that we can share? And so we were able to come up with some interesting things to consider as we consider what types of opportunities we can share. And so this presentation, this is a general overview. We're going to look at the challenge that a trending or that a new economy, right, poses, what projections kind of look like, some of the occupations that are there, but really we looked at this through a lens of what skills will be needed for those jobs, right? And so we are, of course, a four-year institution, and that's important for us as we prepare students for these jobs and helping them understand these new and innovative technologies. And then some of the tools that we have on our campus that helped inform this presentation, we're just kind of share the landscape that helped us come to these conclusions and then open it up for questions. So, right, the trending economies challenge. Well, we looked at several reports, and by the way, all of the citations are linked within here, right? So you'll be able to find on various slides the citations as we provide a copy of this for you. And as we looked at trending economies, some of the issues that you really have when you're trying to understand what the future workforce will be are that occupation codes don't currently exist. And innovation sometimes comes at the intersection of two different industries. And so there's a good amount of digging and keyword search and really being able to listen to what those in the industry who are making those moves are seeing and doing. And sometimes that looks like really analyzing the job posting analytics, because the words used, that the skills, the tasks that are being advertised for, the language will change. And so we're able to use some of the labor market information provided by Lightcast to get a general idea, to present some basic information for you to review today. And so as we consider, right, what those challenges are, we realize that we can look at an individual occupation and see how the sectors and industries kind of divulge. So we've found that there is a huge opportunity for growth where electric vehicle industry kind of meets in the manufacturing and domestic energy kind of collaboration, and that the way to find what might be happening in the future might be really looking at how jobs are changing in the current manufacturing employee, right? So asking employees who are working in various modalities of this industry. And we're going to look at several of these as we go forward. And just kind of considering that as a subsection, the transportation section has really seen a loss of jobs, according to, based on an earlier recession. And so these are projections based on information with algorithmic extrapolations. So, right, setting some standards, our base of information is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And you see the sources there for you if you want to kind of check out exactly what the report we were reading and make decisions for yourself. So what did we find? So we looked at, again, our Lightcast labor market information and said, okay, well, what's happening right now? Who's doing what? What are the jobs currently being investigated and how much are they paying? What credentials are needed for these jobs? And we found quite a few, and we looked at different worktops. So this will, of course, mean different things to different people. In some senses, it will mean upskilling by certification because they already have basic skills. What does that mean for each of these different industries or occupations really depends on what programs are currently offering. So for example, what is Cal Poly offering right now, where maybe we can add the Department of Energy's GATE program, or are they already doing it? I really don't know, but these are the opportunities to look at things that have already been done or the credentials that already exist and see where can we upskill instead of building a whole new program. And as you see, the salaries are fairly aligned with education and credentials right now, and that's not going to change. When we look at manufacturing, as you saw earlier in the slide, it's really what we've been able to find is kind of that dovetail between manufacturing and the electric sector or the energy sector. And so as we are able to locate, given the limitations, these are some of the occupations. And you'll see that the credentials really are more on the job training. Of course, these are really prime targets to investigate, right? What on the job training is needed. And this is a great target for people who are entering a new sector. And you also notice that the wages are a little bit lower. but this is an entry point and an opportunity, and what we offer or what we can offer as training, this is a great place to find those opportunities. Now, of course, I work at a four-year institution. I'm not saying either or, I'm saying and, right? So even my students who could be learning while they're enrolled in classes, they could be taking these jobs and making money that will help sustain them. And there are some apprenticeships that are out there and that are kind of clearly set up with organizations like the Division of Industrial Relations, Department of Industrial Relations Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And so there are opportunities where we can learn from things that have already been done, and understanding the landscape of what the credential needs are will be helpful. And this is what we were able to find. And as you see, when you look at infrastructure, there are a lot of jobs that aren't directly related to an electric battery. However, that's important to know too, right? There's room for a lot of people. Consider sales. Somebody is selling this and they're going to have to speak the language. What does that language look like? And this is one of those upskilling conversations that I'm talking about, right? Salespeople are salespeople and they do what they do because they enjoy what they do, but you still have to learn the language and understand the landscape to be able to participate in this community. And so we were able to say, okay, well, some of these things we cannot find. Again, emerging, charging solutions providers. We did find a training program. And of course, now the acronym is escaping me. However, they have a training program, and I looked at the modality and I'm like, okay, this is a good example. And it's electric vehicle, I forget what the I is, but training program. And so if you know, now would be a good time to go on and open your mic and drop what that acronym stands for. I am not opposed. But point being, there are opportunities for us to learn from what's already been doing. For example, bus drivers plus, right, these training modules would be able to upskill and be able to participate in this new targeted industry. And so what are the upskilling considerations? So in this moment where we found we were a little bit more challenged is we don't really know the scope of analysis that the group in its entirety wants to consider. And when I say that is, are we looking at job titles? Which job titles will be changing and how do we help people prepare? Occupation, industry level. And of course, I looked and I mentioned that we looked at the occupation level because across industries, there are similar job types. Job titles is a lot more nebulous because people call the same job different things. And so the language of the business will require some familiarity across industries, across job types, but in an analysis, we need to decide what we are talking about. What is our focus in the scope of this particular conversation? And so looking at electric vehicles, we looked at, here are some of the companies who are doing it. This is the type of information that our labor market information provides us. Who's doing it? What are some key skills? And what are some job titles that might be associated with the skills that are available? And so some of the Southern California companies that are hiring and approved to install EV charging infrastructure, we were able to locate the list. The sources, of course, located at the bottom, the California Energy Commission. And these are local Southern California, excluding the San Diego area. So I would say, let's start here, right? They're involved. Let us have a conversation and make sure we understand where their jobs seem to be changing, or, right? That's the point. Let us talk to the folks who are already approved for this infrastructure and ask them what their needs are. And so what skills, right? Our goal, like I said early in the conversation, we wanted to know what skills are going to be needed for those new jobs. And so again, this is Grid was really great about letting me use their company to kind of show what our software does. Given a particular company, we can look at their hiring pattern to see what they've hired for. This is what makes it difficult to anticipate what they will be hiring for in the future if it is a nascent industry or occupation. However, you can get some idea as some of these smaller areas start moving upward into the hiring pattern. So some of the needs start changing. And so we do have a way to look at what changes are occurring, but not necessarily what the new job titles might be. So I suggest we learn from previous waves of this industry. So there are other electric vehicle elements, right? And CalSTART will recognize that I referenced their zero emission bus technology. So what was needed in that industry? What changes have been made to the jobs in those industries that are a little bit before the e-truck space? And so that was the recommendation from our team, is like, we need a little bit more information because it is an emerging industry, and we need our partners who are actively on the ground, frontline, to say, hey, this is how these jobs have changed. We haven't quite recoded HR and changed it into a whole new job description, but this is what we think this is what we're doing. And so we went and we looked at a company called Electrify America, and we looked at the careers to say, well, what are they hiring for? Again, these are suggestions and how we kind of followed, how do we find information on an industry that is kind of an intersection and doesn't have its own occupation codes. And so, right, what you're looking at is their careers page and the types of jobs that they're looking for. And as you see, there's project management. Well, let me not be dismissive. There are Scrum Masters, which is in the world of project management, but not the exact same thing, as well as project managers, network operations, and, and system engineer type folks in this moment. And so our software, when we can give occupation codes, will allow us to look at a career pathways element. So let me make this a little bit larger. And of course, you will have access to this report, but it allows us to take what is one career pathway and see what the most or kind of least related sister pathways are. This is a new feature, by the way, of Lightcast software, which we happen to love in this moment. And as you see on the right-hand side here, where it's saying category, it shows how a particular occupation is related to the occupation under investigation. So as we have job titles, we can do a little bit more looking at things, right? But if there are few job postings, that limits our ability to analyze what's available. And so I point you to the lower right-hand corner where you see the dark blue and light blue lines. And so quick cheat sheet here, the dark blue lines are what are the skills specific that those who are hiring engineer and machine fabricators are looking for, versus the skills that are kind of related, which are the machinist. And this shows you kind of the balance of what are the difference. And so this is how we begin to analyze what a career pathway might look like. Because although someone might enter in an administrative or more sales or maybe lower end technical role, it does lead to a pathway if they develop certain skills. It can lead to a pathway into other positions, and looking at what those might look like could be helpful to developing a long-term training plan. And so finally, again, what the software can show us, labor market demand versus supply. And as you'll see, there aren't a lot of local graduates in production helpers and workers when we're looking at these particular manufacturers. So we're looking at these organizations and what the labor supply and demand looks like. And so where you see a large number of local graduates, then you're in a pretty good position, but if you look at frontline 1, 2, 3, 4, about fourth line down, frontline supervisors and administrative workers, there's a large local supply, about 1.5 million, right? And there's about 1 million graduates regularly. So this is a good feed into the labor market. So that's kind of how we look at this, right? Kind of matching what are the jobs that are being posted versus what are the jobs that are that students are graduating for that usually fill those jobs. Again, what can we look at? Employee gain and drain. So when we looked at these particular organizations, we did include the San Diego organizations in this one, because I recognize the names. But where did they come from, right? And so when we're looking at the emerging process, people are moving and switching jobs, things are changing. Where are the people coming from? And then where are they going to? That helps us identify possibly potential others getting into this industrial area. And then what jobs are they posting for? So utilizing that particular set of companies, what are the jobs that they have posted for? And as you see, most of them are in architecture and engineering, and then secondarily installation, maintenance, and repair. Where do we want to focus? What is the scope of the analysis that we want to consider in this moment? Again, right, small sand keys on my software. If we identify one in particular, I can click on that color. So if I wanted to click on the architecture and engineering within my software opportunity, I can say, okay, they hired this many in this term, this many in that term, this many in that term, and then I can drill down and see exactly what those people were doing. And so it's dynamic software, but this gives you an idea of where to start the questions and conversations about what is the scope of our analysis? What area do we want to focus in? And so finally, right, we say all that to say there are great opportunities to really drill down into some of these areas, into some of these organizations and companies. And our campus, we have interns. And if your organizations, in particular, the industry partners, are within the, 501c3 community-based organization industry partners, we would like to get our students involved, because this is how we build a training pipeline. If people understand and know about the industry, then they are able to participate and understand more. So we would like to get students involved and say, hey, what do you think? How can you add value? And how do you feel your community might be involved in this conversation? And so that is what I have for you. I'm going to stop share. I see that something's been populating the chat. I have not looked at them. And so I know it's a lot, but like I said, I will go on and drop that slide deck so that, or actually CalSTART and the team will have this slide deck so that they can best share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rawls and Kavina. We really appreciate it. For everyone on the call, Dr. Rawls just volunteered. She heard about the project and she said, I can help you with that. And so this is so invaluable to our efforts, Dr. Rawls, because to be honest with you, GRID has been, focused on solar and now clean mobility, but, this was something that was completely foreign to us. And so I know there's going to be a lot of questions here. I wanted to also give CalSTART, Alicia, if, you had any comments or questions, because, I think the presentation really gave us a chance to dive into, the potential workforce development areas and, future jobs of the future. And so just wondering, Alicia or CalSTART, if you have any comments to start us off.
Stella, thank you so much. Dr. Rawls, this was such an awesome presentation. I am so incredibly encouraged with all this fantastic tracking of opportunities. I mean, this is exactly the type of information we need to be pulling together and sharing with all of our wonderful stakeholders, because there is a pretty tremendous need to build the workforce in this space. And I'm quite inspired by your presentation and look forward to working with you. I don't know, Michael, if you want to share something from the CalSTART team.
Oh, just that we'll have a bit of a discussion time following this that we can maybe ask about this more
Yeah.
to everybody. But yeah, this is amazing. I just want to echo what Alicia said.
Yeah, and Dr. Alls, folks are asking, whether the presentation is going to be available. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at the chat first, and then we'll open it up. And if you guys want to go to the next slide. Let's see, Michael Render says, we have had these discussions with LAUSD, linked learning model, and map this to Watts TCC. I think that's grant, right? So Michael, anything else that you wanted to add there?
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Michael.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, so this team, Jackie Badeo invited me to this meeting. This team that's been working in Watts has been working with the Los Angeles Unified School District in the Linked Learning Project, because what they want to do is they want to get the juniors and seniors to be able to do their capstone project in what we call an authentic workspace with a pay to learn model. And our team has kind of mapped out the kind of cross-disciplinary approach that the professor just demonstrated or talked through for the entire green infrastructure. And it really gets to this term called digital transformation modeling. And we have presented that and talked to them and worked with them and demonstrated this. So Jackie's kind of been leading that conversation in Watts, and I wanted to share that with you guys because I think it's totally tied back to getting the smart grid to operate and to be able to put the smart grid downstream. It's a much bigger conversation than just an auto mechanic. And it's really a transformational model to what it means to run a digital economy and a digital opportunity, all the business developments as well. So I want to put that out there and say we're talking directly with the county with their Delete the Divide project and have been kind of mapping out what this might look like with this cross-disciplinary approach. So we're all on the same page, and I wanted to share that.
Very good. Thank you so much, Michael. Really appreciate it. Look forward to hearing more about that, about your efforts there. Let's see, I'm going through the chat here. And again, as Tuan suggested, raise your hand, put a question in the chat, a comment, just, great information. Crystal, thank you. Very helpful. That was awesome. I'd like that to be presented to my board for the USW Proterra pre-apprenticeship. You're getting requests, Dr. Rawls. Let's see. Thank you for sharing your email address. And Dr. Rawls says she's open to any and all partnerships benefit students in our collective communities. So yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. So we have a few more questions, but if anything comes to mind, please, like I said, raise your hand, put it in the chat. But I'm going to hand this over to Michael, who has a question for all of us. Michael? We can go to the next slide. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to, in a way, just ask for more discussion, kind of given the larger context that we're in here and where we might go as a group. So in our upcoming meetings, we're planning to cover several major topics, right? Already identified in our initial scoping documents, and I just want to list some of these out and then inflect them through what we just heard. So here's just 4 areas: connecting new industry needs to training opportunities, building a new network of connections and hiring practices. Perhaps 3, how these opportunities can be place-based and benefit the community. And what the eTruck project in particular, this type of a project, can do to reduce barriers to these opportunities and facilitate these connections. So my question was, again, building off of this and trying to and if anybody wants to chime in, go for it. What can more granular needs analysis like this at this level that we've just seen do to advance any one of these discussion about any one of these items? What other information gaps are there, on the other hand, that we would also maybe want to look into? So those are my just 2 very broad questions to maybe focus discussion. Yeah, and feel free to
Wait,
jump in.
those questions aren't for me though, right? They're for like the larger group?
No,
or- Okay.
they're for the larger group, but we wanted
Okay,
to,
great.
in a way,
Yeah.
if you have any ideas about them, that it was meant to build off of
Yeah.
the presentation. So yeah.
Yes, well, I certainly don't have many, but Kavena says social listening is a thing and we should employ that to see the innovative people talking about it, but she's not here and I don't know what that means.
All right, Michael, we have some hands up. We have Luana, Hector, Michael, then Veronica.
Hi, yes, Luana Medina with the County of Los Angeles, and thank you, Dr. Rawls, for this analysis. I thought it was very insightful. I do have a couple of responses to your question on CalSTART. I think what would be great in this analysis would be to get an idea of the demographics. One of the big state goals, and I think over even the federal government, is about diversity and inclusion, and kind of getting a better understanding of the representation within those job markets or buckets and categories, just to make sure that as we are working these workforce development programs, we're concentrating on filling those gaps. And then the second, it's actually for Dr. Rawls. I was curious about your EV occupation salaries. I felt they were really low. So I just didn't know if are those like industry standards or national averages, because I mean, living in California, everybody here can feel the burn, so to speak, economically. And so my thought has always been that those opportunities had a higher pay range, especially for individuals that didn't need to attend a four-year college. Because that's one of the things we advocate in clean energy programs is you don't necessarily need to have a four-year degree to make entry-level salaries. It's really about the on-job training and the certified training or pre-apprenticeship training that provides those opportunities of intergenerational wealth. So it'd be great to hear about where that data comes from.
Sure. You can actually access the whole of where Lightcast data comes from their website, which is lightcast.io. And I will say this is limited to what job postings people put out there. So as you know, the limitations of putting out an advertisement means even if you want somebody to do a very specific task, you might kind of umbrella it under a very generic term. So does it capture the salaries precisely? Perhaps not. It is an indicator. It's a conversation place to begin an analysis.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Luana. Thank you, Dr. Rawls. Hector, you have your hand up?
Thanks, and thank you, Dr. Rawls, for the presentation and all of that information. It's really exciting to review, and I don't want this to sound at all like a criticism, but of the presentation or the research, but I think I did notice that there were at least several other electric heavy-duty vehicle manufacturers that are located in California that might not have been listed. Maybe they were included in part of the data, but there's along with sort of other kinds of vehicle manufacturers, and I feel like that just speaks more to sort of the scale and opportunity of California really sort of becoming the electric transit vehicle manufacturing hub for the rest of the country, as other sort of transit agencies and municipalities purchase cleaner technology vehicles to replace their fossil fuel fleets. But I think my question, and maybe the question for the group, is along the lines of just the previous comment. I saw that for a lot of the maybe entry-level jobs, production work jobs, the average wage and postings $16, which I think is it's still below California minimum wage. And I guess my question is there more about that number in particular shared that kind of tells the story of what why that is such a low figure? But I guess my question for the broader group and what I think should be part of our ongoing discussion is it's great.
Uh-oh, Hector, are you still there? Oh, shoot, he was just getting to his question.
Sorry, I'm having
Oh, wait,
connectivity
he's here.
issues.
Hector, are you there?
I'm
Hector,
sorry, I'm having connectivity issues. Can people hear me?
yes, we can now. We just didn't hear your question.
I'm wrapping up. Yeah, my question was, what can this group do about how we could raise the floor some of those really low
Hector, you're cutting out. I'm sorry. Could you put your question in the chat?
But meanwhile, I do want to address the salaries. Hopefully we can get Hector's question in the chat.
Yeah.
Whether, first of all, maybe 29, and that's a high estimate of salary observations are reported. I didn't include that information because I didn't ask. I didn't make that inquiry. Can I drill down on why that particular salary is what it is? Sure, but I'm not sure that that's helpful to the conversation that we're trying to have right now, because again, it's an emerging industry and some jobs are just simply changing. It could be a low paying job that has something that is developing into a different type of job. I would encourage you not necessarily to focus on the accuracy of job posting analytics for salaries, because as I mentioned, 29% of salary postings would be on the high end. It has not been yet mandated federally that people include job salaries. And when they include them, they include a range, which means an average, of reported salaries. That's just not, that's not something that you want to stick on. You want to look at it as, if it says 39, you could be looking at a secretary coming in to learn the trade, or an apprentice or an intern. We didn't scope it for education level. Again, that's the point of the presentation, is it needs to be scoped to really drill down into a conversation. But Dr. Michelle Yanez pointed out in the chat that LAEDC has a report that's specific to the industry. And so I want to kind of yield the floor to say there's other information available. We just provided what we had with the information we had at the time.
And can I add to that? It's a great report. I use it all the time because they really dive deep. And also I understand what you said, like sometimes new jobs or emerging jobs don't have the right codes to identify the exact jobs we're looking for. So you just kind of use other jobs that are similar to what we're doing. And then also community colleges. Also, like say we wanted to take a look at what are the community colleges doing or 4 years doing to train workers for the jobs that we want to fill. It's difficult because they also don't use the right codes. So sometimes it's just a matter of not having codes to find what we're looking for.
Thank you for that clarification, Dr. Yanez. We're going to come back to you in just a little bit. Michael has his hand up, and Veronica. Good questions.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. A couple of things. So we've been involved at LA Trade Tech for 20 years in this conversation, and we presented this whole narrative to way back Governor Schwarzenegger with a project we called T3, and that T3 project stood for 3 taxonomies: the taxonomy of education, the taxonomy of the environment, and the taxonomy of employment. And that nexus between those three is become this environmental conversation. So we've already cross-mapped what's called an enterprise solution, and we've been working with the federal government on this. And right now, the EPA has maps that are called opportunity areas, and those opportunity areas through the Census Bureau, you can click on them and get down to census tracts and actually look at the census tract with what is the current employment situation. But we wrote a position paper called participatory governance. And that means for people to be able to navigate and participate so that they feel ownership of this environmental conversation, so they can see where these jobs and interconnections actually fall. And that is, to the lady that spoke earlier from the county, that's really the crux of what inclusion, diversity, and equity will mean. It's participation. And so we want to bring all that forward at the state level. And there's people talking in the governor's office right now, the current governor, Newsom, about this integrated information model, because we have to find what best fit is. And it's not going to be best fit through conversation. It's going to be best fit through technology of AI. And I don't want to take the conversation off topic, but it's really important that we don't pigeonhole into career pathways too early, and we actually build a pipeline for our youth so that they feel participatory in building this ecological system we're talking about.
Thank you for that, Michael. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's see, we have Veronica.
Thank you, Stella. Hi, everybody. Veronica Wilson, she, her pronouns. I'm at the UCLA Labor Center. I'm only and thinking I really was on the edge of my seat there for Hector's question, but I wanted to presume that he might have been talking about raise the floor for the lower paying jobs, so we don't have that dire need for mobility and the urgency of pace to train people up with the only pathway for sustaining themselves and their family. So there's that part. And then the other is a little bit along the lines, I think, of what Michelle brought up in the chat. Thank you for mentioning the steelworkers having programs and working with Proterra. My only thought during the presentation, which was beautiful, by the way, I really wanted to get into details, and I love the slides, is the perspective from people who are working in the business, surveying what's going on, how the employment experience is made better by the workforce working together, and sort of informing one another, finding out what the needs are from their perspective, and then Indian experiences in the training programs with the partnerships with community colleges is also something I think would be really wonderful to add. And I'll stop there. Sure.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Appreciate your comments and your thoughts there. Yeah, and I was hoping that Hector was going to be able to share that question with us. Hopefully he's still around there. Any other I don't see any other hands, but I did want to just point out Danny's comment. I see a gap in only focusing on battery electric instead of zero emission vehicles. For instance, employers may choose a workforce that knows both battery and hybrid systems instead of just battery electric. A really good point, Danny. And I ask if any of our partners have comments around this, Michael or Alicia or the CalSTART team, the EPRI team. Any thoughts there?
No, that's a good point. Just from me, that definitely recognize that point that there's right in larger concerns. There's zero emissions vehicles in general, near zero emissions vehicles, and all the work that's going on towards those types of technologies. And then there's battery electric vehicles. So understanding these differences in the profiles that may actually be sort of needed to figure out if there's any like you say, either specializations necessary between those or across those versus, possibly areas of pigeonholing, right? I totally take your point. I'm just thinking through that. There's a lot to dig into there. We want to, in a way, be able to support many of those, but yeah, not being too specific that we get too granular would be in one area only, I think is key. So just noting that.
Thank you, Michael. And Sarah says hydrogen vehicles as well. Yes, absolutely. And Danny made that same point at a previous meeting. So just some things to really seriously consider as we move further into this pilot and then into the eventual phases of this eTruck Retta project. Let's see, one more comment here. And this is from, Jackie, Commissioner Badejo. Let's see, Jackie says, very insightful. Do we incorporate the business entrepreneurial component, considering contracting opportunities, union, non-union infrastructure? And at what point do we frame this conversation beyond workforce, which supports and builds the businesses that move industries? Also hits on just transition of current businesses and communities for the new workforce. Also, real estate owners and government entities play a major role in properly mapping the land use infrastructure for training roles and industry development, and must all connect from the federal government down to the grassroots. We must address the divide pertaining to unions versus non-union. Effective work case management and the intersection of industries is the key. Yeah, absolutely. Michael, any comments there?
Just on one point of that, in terms of connecting this all the way from the federal down to the grassroots in terms of just transition concepts and ideas, I think that's very important, and kind of has hit at it on that sort of third topic there that is in this sort of grab bag list that I've put together of thinking about the actual place-based kind of benefits and challenges that are actually involved in where we're talking about. I think that's very key, again, alongside all of these things. So just wanted to map out particular dependencies that are place-based, I guess, and work on those types of problems that are based in that in areas and how they are driven in a sort of spatial way, I think is going to be key about this particular project, given its elements. So totally, again, that's just one reflection on the many points there.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Commissioner Badejo, for your comments and your observations there. Very, very important to this effort here. So we'll make sure that that is included in our summary, and that working with CalSTART and EPRI, that we reflect that in any type of future discussions and any type of follow-up steps on this project. So really appreciate that. I don't see any more hands or questions or comments in the chat. So let's go to the final question. Well, actually, one more question, and then we have a little survey. So we can go to question 2. And so Giovanni mentioned this earlier in the presentation. We're really hoping that as we continue to meet, as we continue to learn more about workforce development and, just how this will hopefully positively impact the communities that we all serve. Are there any other organizations that you feel should be notified and part of this effort? We continue to see more interest in this effort. We've made it a point to, all the folks that we invited at the very beginning of this effort that we reached out to, we continue to keep them or keep contact with them. And so we have folks that say, hey, I wasn't able to attend last year's meetings, but I'd love to be part of this moving forward. And so we've added additional groups and organizations and cities to these committee meetings. But we would really appreciate if you think of someone, that you think should be here at the table and part of this discussion. we would love to hear from you. So any thoughts right now before we move on to the survey questions? And you don't even have to raise your hand. Dr. Yanez, looks like you wanted to say something. No, you okay? All right. All right. Well, just keep thinking about that. And please let us know. Please let Giovanni know, and he can make sure to invite them to the next session. But let's continue to move forward because we only have a few minutes left. And so Giovanni's going to share with us some really quick survey questions. Giovanni?
Yes, hello, thank you. So we won't be conducting a survey right now during this meeting, but more, we're just kind of giving a heads up of a survey we'll send to everyone via email in the coming weeks. And, this is all related to just, again, what kinds of information we need, right? To help inform what we're going to do in terms of putting together curriculum and training in this emerging sector, right? So it's more of like, and this has come about in conversations with Dr. Rawls as we were preparing for this meeting, and as she was preparing her presentation for today, just thinking about what more we need to dig into, or what other kinds of information we need to gather as well, to be able to dig deeper into these various industries and trends that we're seeing, right, emerging in job postings or et cetera, right? And so again, that's kind of like the reason why we want to send this kind of survey that we'll be sending in the coming weeks. And we'll be sending it to everyone, all of the WDAC members, so everyone that is present today or those that just couldn't join us, unfortunately, but everyone that we have that is a part of this Workforce Development Advisory Committee, we'll be sending it to everyone there on the WDAC, but also we'll be sending it to our Industry Technology Advisory Committee as well, the ITAC, right? To also survey our industry partners as well, right? Because we need to hear from them as well. What they are going to be looking for in the future, when they kind of start really ramping up hiring, right? And so these are shown on screen. What to this effect, what we'll be asking in some of the survey questions that we'll send over, right? We're still thinking through all the questions and what else we'll add, but it's just going to be questions to this effect to kind of hear from you all. And get your suggestions, your thoughts as well. And again, we're going to also be surveying the industry partners as well that form part of the Industry Technology Advisory Committee. So this will be happening in the coming weeks. So you'll hear from me in the next coming weeks with these survey questions. And we would love, again, your expertise, your thoughts to help us through this and to gather more information. I wanted to see if Dr. Rawls wanted to add anything else as to why it's important to survey, right, the rest of the WDAC and the industry partners as well from the ITAC, why we're doing this. Dr. Rawls, is there anything that maybe I might have missed on the premise of why we want to send out a survey? Maybe she stepped away, but hopefully I covered it. But again, this is just a heads up for everyone, that we'll be sending something in the coming weeks. All right, and to wrap us up here, we pretty much are at the tail end now of our meeting. And so just wanted to share some next steps. We do have our next quarterly meeting set for the WDAC taking place on April 12th from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Everyone here should have the calendar invite. I see some new names that joined us. We took down some names here, but if this is your first meeting, if someone else invited you, and you haven't been receiving my emails, my reminder emails, I do not want to miss you in and not include you in our next follow-up emails. If you can please include in the chat your email so that I can capture that, and that way you are included in the follow-up emails. And I could also follow up with sending the and adding you to the calendar invites for the future quarterly meetings that we have. Again, I do see some new names that I have not emailed before. I'm very familiar with everyone that we've been following up with and including on the calendar invites. And so I know for a fact there are some emails I don't have. And again, I just don't want to for you to miss out in future information and emails that we send out, and so that you could also stay abreast of updates and the future quarterly meetings coming up. So feel free to send me your email so I can include you in that communication. And then, the team, again, is working on future industry partner presentations, so stay tuned for that. And again, as I alluded, we'll be sending some follow-up emails. One will be the meeting summary and a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, our PowerPoint presentation, but also Dr. Rawls' presentation as well. And then separately, there'll be a separate email with the survey that we hinted at. Next slide, please. And just our contact information here for the GRID team. Again, for some folks that are joining us for the first time, Stella and I are on this call, and Adewale as well, who joined us in the beginning, representing GRID Alternatives. Adewale is our VP of Workforce Development over at headquarters, and he's currently filling in for our Shamika Dixon, who's our Director of Workforce Development for Greater Los Angeles. So she's currently on leave, but will be returning in a couple of weeks, I think expected next month. So Adewale is just filling in, and so that's why we include also her email, as she will be joining us back in a couple of weeks. And then, of course, contact information for our partner over at EPRI, Kristen Bush. And then next slide, please. You'll also have, again, contact information for our wonderful partners over at CalSTART as well. And with that, I just want to thank you all again for your time, for joining us. We are a couple of minutes early here, so we'll give you that time back before your next meeting. And I'll open it up to the team for any closing words.
Just thank you. We really appreciate your ongoing support of this effort and your feedback, your suggestions, your responses to the survey questions. All of that will be helpful as we move on to the next phase of this project. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Before anybody more leaves, I believe there was somebody here in the group who wanted to share something to everyone.
Yeah, that was Luana, and she said that she'll follow up with us.
Well, if we have 10 minutes and you guys seem interested in diversity, inclusion, and reaching out to the youth, I'm happy to present. I got time if you guys got time.
Well, yeah, that's completely up to the audience here, Luana. But yeah. If you are interested, we can stay on another 5 minutes or so. And so thank you all to everyone that has to leave. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.